Welcome. I'm here to show you how to complete your Sea Star survey. I've arrived here at the beach. It's about 30 minutes before low tide. I want to show you some of the equipment that I've brought. I've of course got my protocol sheet that is super helpful here. For one reason that it's helpful is it has a checklist of items that you'll need to have. Before I left today, I went through the checklist and made sure I had all of these in my backpack. A couple of the items you can see here, there's a ruler, I've got hand sanitizer, pencil, I've got my data sheet down here. That's where I'm actually going to be doing and recording some observations. I've got kind of a magazine actually that's thick enough that I'll use it as a clipboard. On my phone, I've got a couple of important items. First of all, well, you can use Google Maps. You can use Google Maps to show you your GPS coordinates wherever you're at or wherever you want to on the map. If you hold down, you can hold down until you see a red pin. Once you see that red pin, you've actually got your coordinates up in the search bar. So that'll be helpful for you. On here, I also have already pulled open the disease wasting category guide. That'll be important when I find some sea stars. I also have pulled up identification guides. So, you know, there are three main stars we're looking for, the Pisaster, and you can see that here. We've also are going to be looking for the Evisterius star, and then finally the Pycnopodia, the sunflower star. So I've got those three species pulled up, so I'll be able to identify whatever I find. Okay, I've updated my data sheet as per the first directions out here. I'm just following along on my protocol guide. It says in the field upon arriving at your site to add some things to the top of your data sheet. So I added the location, the date, my name is the recorder. I also added the GPS coordinates up here. Just a quick note about how this data sheet is laid out. As you can see, we're expecting to find Pisaster sea stars and Evisterius sea stars, and each time we find one, we'll add information. If it's Pisaster, we'll add it over here. If it's Evisterius, we'll add it over here. If we come across any other species of sea stars, we'll add them down here as at the bottom. And you'll just need to do the best you can to identify these. Make sure you take pictures of all the sea stars you find. That's going to help you if you can't identify them right away. Folks at the Vashon Nature Center will be able to help you out with that. Okay, step number 2 here on the protocol guide says pace out 300 steps for your transect line at the water's edge and mark both ends. Okay, we're going for 500 meters here, and so that's going to be 300 steps approximately, counting the same foot for each step. I've got here a board that I've placed at the ground. That's going to be one side. You could bring something with you to the beach. That could be a good thing for you to place down there. If the tide's coming in, do be aware of that. But this will work for me. I found it here at the beach. Okay, and I'm going to start pacing off my steps. Okay, I made it. I walked 300 steps. It was really a long way. 500 meters is quite a distance. One thing I would say is that I took really regular sized steps, and that's what you should do. That'll get you close to that 500 meters. If you're taking extra long steps because you know you're counting it off, you might throw things off a little bit. I reached the end of my transect. I found this concrete pillar here. I put a rock on top of it. That's a good marker for the end of my transect. Good reminder here, if you do pick up any rocks off of the beach, always return them back to where you found them. So I know a nearby spot or where this rock goes, and I'll put it back when I'm done. That protects any creatures that might be living on that rock or living underneath it. If you brought your data sheet with you, this would be a time where you could just turn back around and start walking your survey again, looking for sea stars. I left mine back at the beginning of my transect, so I'm gonna go grab that, and then we're gonna start looking for some sea stars. All right, I'm back at the beginning of my transect. There's the board I placed down at the beginning. This time I've got my data sheet ready to go, so I'm ready to mark off any sea stars that I see when I walk my transect again. So that's exactly what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna take off down the transect. Remember, you can do this either direction, so if you finished your transect walk the last time and you want to walk it in reverse this time, that's just fine. Either way, this time I'm actually looking for sea stars. And I'm going to walk the same path I took before. This time, though, I'm going to be looking up to a meter in either direction. And so a meter, that's maybe from about here. There's about a meter away from the center, and then maybe about to here, there's another meter away. So about 2 meters wide. Any sea stars that fall within that area, those are ones that I'm gonna count. So let's take a look and see if we can find any. I'm moving pretty slowly this time because I wanna watch carefully. I also wanna see any juveniles, so really small sea stars too. Those are gonna be important because as the disease is taking out sea stars all along the coast, we're hoping that they're rebounding, that maybe new sea stars are being born at a high rate. And so we're interested in seeing how many juveniles there are. Okay, I've spotted a sea star here as I'm walking along my survey. When you spot a sea star, the first thing you can do is try to identify what species it is. So get out your guides. This one I know to be a Pisaster ocraceus, or the ochre sea star. The way I can tell is that it's a purple color. That's characteristic. Some of them are orange, some of them are brown. Another couple of characteristics are this pattern of white spines that's kind of web-like here. It also has a rather large central disc. There is another sea star, Evisterius. It's the mottled sea star, and its spines aren't quite as pronounced. The central disc is a bit smaller. Its legs look a little bit different too. So what I want to do next is, well, take a picture. That's a good idea here. That might help you identify it later if you can't identify it now. You're going to send those to the Vashon Nature Center as well. We next want to decide what health category is this. And so this sea star, I'm not seeing any signs of disease. No white lesions, no arms that are disintegrating, so this one's healthy. I need to measure it, and to measure that we want to get a radius measurement. So go ahead, use your ruler, and you want to measure from the center of the sea star, the very center, all the way out to the end of one of its arms that's extended as long as possible. So I'm seeing this one in there at right about 16.5 centimeters out to the tip. Do the best you can to measure it down to 1/10 of a centimeter or to the millimeter. But if its arms aren't outstretched, you're gonna just have to do the best you can. Don't take the sea star, try to stretch it out, try to leave it alone, and do your best you can. If you need to kind of curve around an arm, that'll work. But all right, well, now that I've got the sea star measured, I know what species it is, I'm gonna write it down on my data sheet. Okay, I found another sea star here. This one's not looking quite as good as the last one. I'm seeing some signs of the disease. It has lesions, these white lesions on 1, 2, 3, 4 limbs. It does have all 5 limbs, so that's good news, but this disease has actually progressed enough, since it's on 4 limbs, to be in the severe category. So I'm gonna measure this sea star, figure out its radius, but I'm gonna count it as severely diseased. If along the course of your survey you come across any large rocks or boulders, make sure you do a really thorough job checking down in the cracks. Bring a flashlight. Look in there. There might be some sea stars that are wedged in there trying to stay moist. Also, often juvenile sea stars are down in the cracks. And so do your best to look around. You don't need to move the rock out of the way. And in fact, please don't. But if you find anything in there, do your best to count it. So I filled out my data sheet. Before I leave the beach, I need to check, is there anything else that I need to do? So once again, check your protocol guide. there you have a section for before you return home. So make sure you've done everything, your data sheet's filled out. Add zeros to your data sheet. That's more informative than having blank sections. So anywhere you didn't see sea stars, add zeros. Make sure you've got all your equipment. Check the, draw a site map. So you've got a worksheet for that. You're going to want to have a detailed representation and particularly descriptions of the start and end points of your transect. Take photos. So hopefully you took photos of your sea stars, but also take photos of the site. So you've got instructions for exactly what photos to take there. And then, hey, nice job. You finished up with your field work. Take a moment to enjoy yourself. If you want to just hang out at the beach, that might be a good idea. I've now returned home from the beach. One thing that I need to do, and one thing that you need to do when you return home from your survey, is to sanitize your equipment. So these are my boots. Also, if you have maybe a ruler or a pencil or any equipment that touched a sea star or got near to a sea star, go ahead and sanitize it. You can do it with a mild bleach solution, but you can also do it with the sunlight. Sunlight's actually a really good sanitizer because of the UV radiation in the sun's rays. It does take some time though, so you need to find a spot that's gonna stay sunny for at least 6 hours. Okay then, I'm back from the beach. I've completed my sea star survey. I wanted to show you a little bit about how I filled out my data sheet. So my observations are here. I collected these while I was out in the field, but here's how I did it. So if you remember, I measured a sea star that was healthy and it was 16.5 centimeters. Well, this data sheet asks you to record in millimeters, and there are 10 millimeters in each centimeter. So 16.5 centimeters, that's 165 millimeters. I recorded it here in that row for 160. It's not quite 170 millimeters. So here it is, 165 millimeters. That's that observation. I found another sea star that was 167 millimeters. So I've got that recorded on the same row. I found a sea star that was pretty big, 182 millimeters. These were all healthy stars, so I recorded them in the healthy section. However, I did find some diseased stars as well, and so, for instance, I found one that was severely diseased and 14.2 centimeters, or 142 millimeters. That's here. I found all Pisistratus sea stars, and so that's why all my data is recorded here. You might find some Evisterius, or even some other species. Those other species go down at the bottom. Okay, that's it for this tutorial. Next steps are going to include sharing your data by uploading it to the shared spreadsheet. It's also going to be uploading photos, which include photos of the data sheet, photos of the site map that you sketched, as well as any photos of sea stars that you saw while you're out in the field.